Say that again? Absolutely, absolutely. If you're a heroin addict today, I mean, again, you're kind of a difficult person to deal with. So drug addicts and the sharing of needles, as an aside, they think that MRSA, methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, which is causing big problems in hospitals, originated from intravenous drug users. And they think that happened because drug users were getting staph infections a lot, or infections a lot, and they could get their hands on antibiotics. And so they started just shooting up antibiotics with their drugs to kind of keep infections away, and sort of bred this community of antibiotic-resistant bugs. So, absolutely. So y'all can kind of see, being a human being and living in the society that we do, there's sort of two different worlds. There's the cold, hard truth, bacterial, viral world. They don't care who you are. I can make you sick. It doesn't matter. And there's kind of the world that we live in terms of, it can be difficult to kind of take our human blinders off and sort of approach problems from sort of the cold, hard truth detachment. So I just kind of wanted to give you that story because HIV could have been a lot less if in 1978 somebody powerful, the government probably would be the best in charge because they're so centralized and they can get things to happen quickly. If they had said, we don't approve of what you're doing, but for God's sakes, use condoms, stop doing this because if it's a disease that you can get, other people can get too.
What was the other problem with the use of condoms?
What do you mean?
Somebody in December made a worldwide statement about the use of condoms.
Oh, the Catholic Church. It's another. Although I could say that the Catholic Church, I mean,
there were massive comments made nationwide about you still can't use condoms even in the stop and spread days. They forbid the use of condoms. It didn't matter if it was going to kill you. They forbid the use of condoms because they did not believe AIDS was passing on in marital relations.
And again, regardless of what your religious beliefs are, I mean, if you believe that, that's fine. It's part of your job as sort of an intelligent, educated human being to sort of weigh the facts. Like, this is what I believe religiously versus this is what the scientific evidence says. I now have to make a choice about what I'm going to do about this.
And so what did the Pope announce in December?
He announced that it was okay to use condoms to prevent the spread of AIDS. So that was
31 years later.
Yeah. That, you know, how long ago was it that the Catholic Church apologized for not helping with the Holocaust? Was that like 40 or 50 years later?
Well, they apologized to Galileo back in 1979. And of course, he lived in what, 1500?
Yeah, I kind of think apologies are a little bit
too late.
You're sorry, okay. Like, oops, so. Does anybody have any questions for me about anything that we talked about or anything like that? Yes, ma'am.
The type of pneumonia you said that they contracted?
I'm sorry, say that again.
The type of pneumonia that you said they...
It was
Pneumocystis pneumonia, which is caused from Pneumocystis carinii. And actually, the classification of Pneumocystis carinii has changed quite a bit over the last 20, 30 years. At some points, they thought it was a protist. At other points, they thought it was a fungus. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure. Your notes will tell you where it's at right now, but it pops around so much, I can't even keep track of where they classify it.
Yeah, this book was written in
But it's not something they see.
89 or something?
yeah, this book was this one was in 95.
95, okay.
And it was classified as a protist when this book was written. So
That's not
this,
the basic pneumonia, right?
Oh, God, no. Pneumocystis pneumonia is seen primarily in the elderly and the AIDS, or the immunocompromised individuals. They're both, see, Kaposi sarcoma and pneumocystis pneumonia are both opportunistic. So you have to be in some way immunocompromised, and the elderly are immunocompromised. As you get older, your immune system, your soldiers get weaker. They can't stand at the front lines anymore. They got to go take a nap.
Were there doctors in this whole thing that were not upholding their
Absolutely. There's a lot of people in the medical profession who do not separate their personal beliefs from their ethical roles. And that's one of the reasons, the major question they will ask you when you do an interview for medical school is, a woman comes into the ER, she needs an abortion, what do you do? There is only one correct answer. You perform the abortion. It does not make any difference what your beliefs are. You perform the abortion. And physicians have a hard time, just like scientists, separating our personal beliefs from our ethical duties.
I mean, this book really does kind of go, there's a couple of paragraphs talking about this conference when they're talking about homosexual sexual practices. And back then, the medical community was comprised primarily of middle-aged white guys who are probably Protestant. And so you get these guys in the room talking about these things that they've never even imagined or heard of, and they have to talk about it from a clinical, detached, we have to really dissect this. Could doing this hurt somebody? And so it just...
The other thing you guys, most of you have never lived through and you don't even comprehend, that in 1970, somebody your age probably didn't even know about homosexuality. It was not discussed. It wasn't until the early 80s that the first television show addressed it. Billy Crystal was a gay character in a TV soap opera in the evening called Soap. They took it off the air because of his gay character. Later, another TV show in the early 80s called Dynasty brought on another gay character, Stephen Carrington, and that show made lots of money, enough money they kept that TV show on the air. There were a few movies scattered out through that same time frame, 1981 or 82, there was a movie called Making Love where a woman's husband left her for another man. That was, actually, they probably would have won Academy Awards if it had been made today. It was that good of acting, but at the time it was such a taboo topic. People were unaware of the gay community. And the few people they were aware of were more transvestites than a typical gay person. Most gay people you can't point your finger at and say are gay. There are a lot of pro football players who are gay. They may not be out of the closet, but they're still gay.
And the whole point of today's lecture, again, is not to get on a soapbox and say you must agree with this moral thing. I mean, but again, hypothetically speaking, let's say that your mind, this is immoral, you don't agree with it. Who suffered though? I mean, sure, the people in the gay community suffered, but also every person, every child who got to HIV through a blood transfusion, every college student who just had a one-night fling with somebody because they're a stupid 19-year-old, suffered because nobody did anything about this disease. And so, again, it can be very, very difficult to separate yourself from, what you think is morally correct in what, if it's a disease, it knows no race, no gender, no bounds, no nothing. And if this happens again, if you open the newspaper tomorrow and it says, a lot of people in Afghanistan are dying of this really strange thing, the United States government's really happy, you have to say, well, crap, our soldiers are over there. What are these people dying of that our soldiers could get and bring home with them? And kind of as a human being also, you might say, well, crap, those Afghans are dying. These are people just like you and me. That's not cool, but still, that's kind of the whole point of what we're doing today.
Also, another very important thing I don't think Liz mentioned, what event occurred in the 1980s that finally poured money into AIDS research and brought us AZT and the three-drug cocktail? You would never guess.
Is it Magic Johnson?
No, Magic Johnson's much later. He was on the drugs. Huh?
We Are the World?
No. Because she's...
This guy?
No.
No?
No. This guy was a leading male star in the 1960s in movies opposite of Doris Day.
Clark Gable?
Wrong actor. Rock Hudson.
Rock Hudson.
Rock Hudson had a quadruple bypass in 1984. He came down with AIDS, most likely from the transfusions he received, even though he was a gay man. Doris Day had been in seclusion for over 20 years. Rock Hudson was well respected within the acting community, and door stayed was adored. She came out of seclusion, and she got the whole Hollywood community behind her, and they poured millions of dollars into AIDS research. They started the quilt. Some of you may be familiar with the quilt that went across the country. Parents would contribute squares to kids that they lost due to the disease. They finally said, this is a disease that we're going to treat, and the people of Hollywood is what caused that to occur. What other couple of Hollywood stars have brought massive money into research in this country? Parkinson's disease.
Michael J. Fox.
Spinal cord injury.
Superman.
Christopher Reeves. They're our royalty. We love them, we follow them, and we do what they ask.
My best friend growing up, his dad died when he was 8 from a blood transfusion. He got HIV and AIDS from it.
Yeah, prior to 1985, the blood wasn't safe. You did not know what you was going to get. Today, if you go and donate blood, they ask you all these questions, and one of the questions on the form is there a possibility that you might be HIV positive? You can go ahead and mark it yes. They will still take your blood, and then they will dispose of it later. That way, your anonymity is still intact.
A group of coworkers are like, hey, let's go donate blood. It'll be fun during lunch. And you're like, well, I want them to know that I can't donate blood because it's our safe place. A little bit like that. I was going to say one more thing, and I can't remember now.
It's my fault.
No, you said something else. I need to mention that. Oh, the reason I also want to talk about HIV today, and AIDS is because in the 90s that was the big thing. Like, oh, HIV, AIDS, big deal. The United States has kind of forgotten this a little bit. What's the big sexy disease now to be in support of? I support this.
Syphilis.
Not right.
It's
Breast
around.
cancer, absolutely. And why are we so supportive of breast cancer research and stuff? Because my mama can get it, my sister can get it, my daughter can get it.
1 in 4 women will get it.
And those are our mamas, our sisters, our daughters. And so it's very, very, very easy to be publicly supportive of breast cancer. But when your gay uncle comes down with HIV, it's not such a sexy disease. So I also wanted to kind of talk about this tonight because I think it's sort of faded from the public consciousness, especially since it's so treatable with drugs today. But still.
And what's the largest growing group of individuals as far as HIV positive? Heterosexual, homosexual? Heterosexual. Young or old?
No.
Ages 14 to 21. Why?
They're sexually active.
Because they're stupid and they don't think anything's going to happen to them. The same way they drive, the same way they drink, the same way they do every stupid thing they do. Sorry guys, you do some stupid things. Not that most of you even look like you're under the age of 21, if I really look out there now, but you look like you're 22.
I mean, and that's again, especially in the gay community, you had this terrible disease, and so the gay community knows you use condoms.
They came together. They fought together.
Whereas, and again, because HIV's kind of fallen from our American conscience, you have these kids that are, going to be dumb, they're going to be kids, and they don't,
Well, two baseball players in my office said, I can't get AIDS in Iowa, and I said, why not? They said, well, we're sleeping with girls from Iowa, and I said, if they're sleeping with you, they'll sleep with anybody. I mean, seriously. You sleep with whoever the person you are in a relationship slept with. And even if you are 100% monogamous and 100% loyal and go into a marriage fully intending to do the right thing, that does not mean the person you married did the same thing. And I don't care if you're male or female, Americans cheat. 50% of the people out there are cheating. And the other big thing is we tell our spouses, if you cheat on me, I'm going to kill you. So are they going to tell you that they cheated? Are they going to tell you they exposed you to AIDS? Arthur Ashe was a famous
Or will they
tennis
go get
player.
tested? Because if they go get tested, it makes them look
No, you can get tested in small communities and it never gets reported. That's why Iola had a lot of testing done. It's a little teeny community. Arthur Ashe, Magic Johnson, these people cheated on their spouse. Luckily, their spouses did not get HIV from it. Which is easier to transmit, male to male, or male to female, or female to male? Why?
Because you're shooting the liquid inside.
Just
Is that not why?
skin and thinner?
The vaginal canal is made of mucous membrane. The penis has a nice cutaneous skin on the outside. So unless there's a cut or a scratch, the male is often protected.
And actually, in Africa, one of the two cheapest things that they've done in Africa to try to cut down on HIV transmission is male circumcision and women, because HIV is transmitted through breast milk. I forgot to tell you that, kind of a big deal. They've really tried to help say don't breastfeed your baby in Africa. I mean, if you're HIV positive, and really kind of tried to help that. So one of my students in my class who's pregnant has told me this, and I didn't know, because I told my class if you're trying to get pregnant or you are pregnant, to get tested for HIV, because you totally don't want to give that to your baby. And she said actually they automatically do that, which I was like, oh, okay, well,
I didn't even know that I had an HIV test until, the doctor gives you paper when you're almost there and says, if you go into labor, take this to the hospital. And I was actually just reading through them on the way home, and I see HIV negative, and I was like, oh, I didn't even know it had an like they didn't ask, so they just do it.
Which is actually a violation of
I should say, I'm sure I probably signed a consent in some form and just didn't read it. But yeah, I mean, they're going to do it.
but I guess at least you didn't look at that and see HIV positive.
Yeah, I think
I
those
think
are
they
a
would
little bit.
have told them. I think they would have done it a little differently.
Is there any estimate of the number of people that died before this was?
Well, actually, there's still a lot of poor people who can't afford the medication. There's still people dying.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but, I mean, I know
Is
it's
there-
probably.
I don't know what the last number I heard even was. It's billions.
It's like 30 or 40 million people. I think that number is right, because you're also looking at very, very, very populated, densely populated, like India, Southeast Asia, or there's a billion people in India, so 30 million people is kind of dropped it off. But that's it.
Where did we test our AIDS medications? In Africa. As soon as they worked, we took them home.
Yeah, and again, just to kind of present this as just cold hard fact, I was during my master's degree, we would go to dinner or go to coffee with. They would bring speakers in, and then we would go to coffee with them to kind of rub elbows and kind of learn how to network and stuff. And one of the guys they brought in was a pharmaceutical rep, I think, and he was talking over coffee, and he said it just kind of one thing led to another, and he was talking. He was like, well, I can't believe the United States government made us sell Africa cheap AIDS drugs. That's ridiculous. We should have been able to sell them at full price, but they made us sell these cheaply to Africa. That's just a bunch of crap. Now, on the one hand, if you spend $10 billion worth of research to produce a drug, you're out $10 billion that you have to make up somehow. So from a capitalistic business standpoint, he has a point. It's another hand there is another moral, aspect that you're telling these people they're too poor to deserve to live if they can't afford the AIDS medication. So again, morality is not black and white. There's a lot of gray, sort of figuring it out for yourself. What is the best, easiest thing to do? And so yeah, the United States made a couple of pharmaceutical companies sell Africa very, very, very cheap drugs. They were not very happy about it. So it's just big old mess. What other questions do y'all have?
Actually, a big old mess really fits the whole thing since 1981 really well.
So HIV turned, eventually you get AIDS?
Yes. Yes, you.
If left untreated.
No, so what are the symptoms of the HIV? Like flu?
There are no symptoms of HIV. There's HIV positive, which has absolutely no symptom at all, but you can test positive on ELISA, and if the ELISA comes back positive, they move on to a Western blot. Hopefully you remember those terms from your lecture notes. And then if it tests positive, they say you have the disease. Then there's an intermediate called ARC, which is AIDS-related complex. It is not a life-threatening condition, but you start exhibiting symptoms, cold symptoms, flu symptoms, things of this sort. It's not classified as AIDS until you have a life-threatening disease that's going to kill you. And usually by the time it's in full-blown AIDS, we can't do anything to help you. So it's a matter of stopping it before it makes you sick. If you can hold it there, these people, like Magic Johnson, are carrying what's considered a zero viral load. But the second you take them off those drugs, HIV, which lives in neurons and hides back there, just waiting, watching, it escapes, it comes out, and it goes full blown again.
You don't die of AIDS, you die of pneumonia, you die of corpus sarcoma, you die of an opportunistic infection. Yeah. So
Leishmania in unit number.
So other than getting tested, you have no way of knowing if you're HIV positive at all?
No, you have no way of knowing unless you're ARC or AIDS.
Well, how do all those people find out they have it?
Not leishmania, trypanosoma. What is it? Not trypanosoma. The dog, cat. Toxoplasma. Toxoplasma is carried by most cats in the United States. And a lot of us carry antibodies, and this is in your unit 5. Toxoplasma doesn't make us sick. So we get it, we get over it, we have antibodies. It kills AIDS patients.
So it's a lot of fun. A lot of people in the 80s, they just died of AIDS. You knew you had it when you came down with kyphosis sarcoma and
Pneumocystis.
pneumocystis, and they'd say, oh look, you have AIDS, you're a little bit SOL at this point.
So do they still let you donate? Like, since I've been out of the country for more than 6 months.
There are rules about being out of the country. There's rules about tattoos. Tattoos, I think you have to wait a year. Out of the country, is it 3 years?
Well, I lived out of the country from between 80 and 89 for over 6 months, so I've never left any blood.
They'll let you take it, but they toss it, kind of the same.
They wouldn't even take mine.
Well, they're supposed to take it because of the fact that your anonymity is supposed to be protected by the federal government. So whoever did that may have been in the wrong. But since you lived out of the country, that's not a real scary thing to be able to tell somebody, I lived out of the country. They're not going to ostracize you because of it. So it's probably safer to do that than the person who's
Something about like the mad cow disease. I was an infant. It's on formula. But
humans don't get mad cow disease.
it's like dormant in your body.
But humans don't get mad cow disease. We get a variant called
Creutzfeldt-Jakob, and I couldn't spell that if you help.
it's a pyron, and usually it's transmitted from a corpse to a coroner or to a mortician. It was first looked at along with kuru when people were eating the brains of dead relatives in ceremonies like in Africa. It was part of the funeral ceremony. Kuru made the cover of Time magazine, and it was a trivia question Liz missed.
Well, it's okay, because Sondra's always used to do it, so we did get it wrong.
I remember from my childhood, it was on the cover of Time magazine. I thought it was so cool. Eating the brains of your dead relatives, And the other thing that wasn't mentioned probably is also in Africa, when it spread across the continent, and it did spread across that continent, it was spread mostly through heterosexual relations. Because in Africa, in many of those small villages, you were executed if you practiced any type of homosexuality and was caught.
I mean, by them. So,
Yeah, he was gone.
And aren't women executed if they're found to commit adultery? Not men, but women.
I don't know, I can't remember that. My friend,
some villages have
no, it's not, that wouldn't be surprising. Like if you cheat in some of the, what's the word I'm looking for? Middle Eastern, that's it. Middle Eastern countries, they'll cut off your right hand. Men.
And another thing I forgot to mention, the reason why AIDS originated in Africa, it was so there's actually two forms of AIDS. There's HIV-1 and HIV-2. I get them mixed up. I think HIV-1 is more prevalent and more virulent, and HIV-2 is a little bit less virulent. I mean, it'll still kill you, but it's not.
It's harder to catch.
It's harder to catch. Crazily enough, and they talk about this in the book, and they cannot figure it out. Crazily enough, HIV-1 and HIV-2 do not come from each other, that they originated from two separate sources as far as the book can tell. And that's like trying to find a needle in a sack of needles.
You can get both, right?
I'm sorry?
You can get both.
You can totally get both, just from the evolution, because usually a disease will pop up and then it'll mutate, and then you'll have the original disease and the mutated version. And HIV-1 and HIV-2 came from two completely different places sort of at the same time. And primates can get HIV. So it started out as
Cows can get a type of HIV.
Didn't it
There are
originate-
actually several different strains of HIV throughout the animal kingdom.
I know there's feline.
Didn't it originate with monkeys?
it did. And so it originated with chimpanzees, and it probably had been present in Africa, forever. But because the villages were so far apart and the monkey-human interaction was so sparse that maybe one person died of HIV and that's it, or a man and a wife died of it in one village every 10 or 20 years or something, so it never got on anybody's radar. However, when you build these gigantic cities, all of a sudden you take them to the gigantic cities and it spreads like wildfire. Then one person from this big gigantic city, some communities in Africa and Haiti had a relationship, because that's where people from Africa would go to Haiti and visit relatives and stuff, and so they brought it to Haiti. And then Haiti was a favorite vacation destination for a lot of homosexual men, and so we're kind of jumping across worlds. And that was when airline travel was very, very, kind of expensive, and not everybody did it. Now,
Even though it's very expensive, everybody does it.
well, yeah, and you can. I mean, there's no place on planet Earth that you can get to that I can't also get to. Thank you, Expedia.com. So lovely.
So they're assuming that this was transmitted probably via a bite.
Yeah, a bite, or if you're,
It actually was considered, it might have been aerosol based at one point.
That's scary.
And they don't know. It mutated after it came to humans, so they're not really sure.
You're bushmeat, if you're hunting, because they eat bushmeat when you're hunting, and the monkey bites you, and you cut the monkey up to barbecue, and you get some monkey blood in your blood, and
I mean, that's how you get rabbit fever. When people hunt out of season, rabbits carry tularemia, and if they get the blood on their hands and there's a cut, they get tularemia. Do the same type of thing.
so who has seen the movie Philadelphia with Tom Hanks?
You don't have time.
I don't have time.
No.
Well, I was just going to show a little bit of it.
Oh, you show a little bit of it.
So,
It works in here. I think.